Thank you guys for being here. Yeah, what we're going to do today is just go through and review the contracts and forms. Obviously, August 17th has come and gone. Y2K did not happen, so we're surviving. But we felt like it was a good opportunity to go through and review the contracts, help make sure everybody feels comfortable with them, ask any questions that are necessary to be out there in that regard. So please feel free to do that. We're just going to kind of go in a certain order. We're going to go through buyer, and then one of the addendums, and then the listing contract. We'll go through in kind of that order. So that's what we will do. My name is Justin Letheby. I am your president-elect for 3 weeks, and I'll become president of the association. So thank you. You want to introduce yourself, Rick?
I am Rick Williams. Just got to be a board member. Very proud to be that. And with United Real Estate Chicago, located in Oak Brook.
I'm Carrie Garstecki. I am the designated managing broker for Keller Williams Inspire, and we have several office locations across the Fox Valley. Also board of directors.
Yeah.
Both are board of directors.
I didn't say designated managing broker, so that's okay.
So thank you guys for being here. I do appreciate that. So I guess we'll just start out. Let's just start with a simple question. What are some of the big changes that you guys put in, or we put in? I'll blame you guys, not me.
Yeah.
What are some of the big changes that we put into the buyer's representation agreement, exclusive right to acquire?
We'll start.
So obviously one of the biggest changes is the clause that says commission or compensation is not set by licensed law, and it is fully negotiable. And the other one is that the brokerage firm cannot be paid more than what is on your buyer agency form. Those are two of the biggest changes based on the settlement that we put into the association, the buyer representation agreement.
And just to compliment what Carrie just said is, remember the compensation. We're all used to. It's a percent. Percent of chickens or whatever. But we also put in a blank there for a dollar amount, a flat fee. Okay. So we're making it very clear, which is what the DOJ and NAR wanted, is that it doesn't have to be what we've always done. That's kind of the whole idea of this, is that it could be anything, okay? Presumably it's got something to do with dollars, but it doesn't have to be necessarily what we've always said and done. Okay, so that's clear in there. There's two different options, to do that. There's also a blank there for retainer fee, okay, which, a lot of people at the beginning were like, I'm not sure I'm going to get paid or this, that, the other. So they wanted to get a retainer fee in there, and it's there. We always had that there, and before. Now it's just a little bit more prevalent, and you can utilize that. It's there. It's a 2-page agreement. There's nothing difficult about it. You all have, copies of it, right, in front of you. So, basically you just put the term whenever it starts to its ending date. And we strategically didn't put, and Justin, questioned me on that specifically, and I don't know if he did to you, but he certainly came up to me and, said something about, how come it doesn't say like a specific address or, location per se. Okay. We did it because what generally happens is that they're using you. Now, if they're using you for, something in Peoria or Springfield, well, that's not likely what's going to happen here, so we know that people, they'll say one thing, and then what are they doing? They're looking in 5 different, towns, so we kind of left it open. You're their realtor, of record on here, and that's it. You're that, unless they're going somewhere else completely, which then I think you would understand, and they would understand too, that can be a different buyer broker agreement,
One of the other things we talked about as a committee was, you'll notice the forms look a little bit different. We tried to make them more friendly for the buyers. That's the one that I think most agents are worried about presenting to buyers. And so we took off all the line numbers because we wanted it to look cleaner, look friendlier. We tried really hard to keep it to the 2 pages.
Not too intimidating. You know, it kind of looks.
And it has, the necessary parts of the contract. The party is involved, the term, what the responsibilities are. You will notice on this one that the designated managing broker for your office does need to sign it. Anytime commission is being talked about, your managing broker should be signing those contracts as well on behalf of the brokerage. So that's why that is in there as well. I know I've had some agents ask about that.
Yeah, and really, just so you understand what this form is for, besides, of course, getting your commission on the buy end, this is exactly what you should be presenting with, not this document, but this is the number, whatever number you put in here. As I tell my agents, go high, okay? Don't go low, because as Carrie already stated, you can certainly get lower, but you can't get higher. So if for some reason the other side is offering, 5 chickens, and you only put 2.5 chickens, you're basically
getting 2 chickens and a couple dozen eggs.
you're going to be short a couple chickens. So, and that's only because you didn't value yourself enough. Value yourself, okay? Explain why you are worth this, okay? And it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to make them understand that you don't have to agree to pay that number isn't the number. It could be less. It can't be more. Chris.
Going to start out, if you guys don't mind, if we can take questions on each one of these. My start off question would be, what if you want to take, is this the form you use, and how would you use it for maybe taking or asking for more for new construction, or a different amount for any other kind of scenario when it comes to a real estate transaction? Can you tier it in a way? Is that something that you could do with this form?
We did not set it up that way. It's just set up for our typical residential transactions when you're taking the buyer out, based on previous forms. If we need to do additional forms, that might be something we can look at down the road as the committee. I know we are not done with our form.
Absolutely not. Yeah, everything's batting practice. We're changing things all the time because we know we have to.
And we expect the forms to still change down the road.
Yeah, but to that point, Chris, what I could say is that if you know that they're going to buy new construction and right, it's not etched in stone, you don't know exactly what they're going to pay out, you could still put your amount, and then, perhaps the buyer will, pay a portion of that as well. That's always a part of it. They may or they may not. But the bottom line is, put it in there, because that should be your ask, and that should be your value, what you're worth. And even if they aren't from the new construction site, they're only paying whatever they're paying, and it's not as much as you wanted. That's okay. That's the discussion then you're having with your buyer at the end of the day.
Buyer's agency, a few years back, I had a realtor, inexperienced realtor, tell me that it was not good to have buyer's agencies because the realtors being sued for not being there 24/7 for their clients is the one question. The second is, can we change something on the contract as long as it's initialed? Something that, like you said, new construction. Something where it could be 4%, but not necessarily, you wouldn't want to put 4% in there for a normal transaction.
Great questions. I think,
Hypothetically speaking.
4 chickens.
so again, great questions. There is still debate from experts way above us on whether or not you can modify your buyer agency. So that's something we need to talk about with our board, with our legal advisors, about whether or not a buyer agency contract can be modified.
we're going to have just a legal disclaimer real quick.
There you go.
Hello. Association current attorney and licensed realtor. What exactly do you mean that you don't know if buyer's agency agreement can be modified? I mean, I would clarify that you probably don't want, as a realtor, to be the one doing the modification to the contract. You'd probably want your client to take it to their attorney and have them make any changes or addenda or whatever they want to do.
Absolutely, we do not want to practice law.
But it's the United States of America, and we all can make our contracts as we want to make our contracts, as long as it's not illegal. So, for point of clarification, you can modify the agreement you have with your buyer. You just don't want to be the one drafting the contract or making the changes to your addenda.
So to speak on that just real quick, Miguel, and it's a solid question because it's obviously one that's been asked all the time. How do I get paid and how do I get mine? Right? Quite literally. Here's what I will say. The current recommendation from our big legal counsel is no, it's not good. Because one of the lawsuits that is out there today is that we are incentivizing the wrong party. So that is why it's encouraged not to go higher than what we agreed to, because then we're negotiating the wrong half. That's the premise of it all. So that's where the stance have been taken from our Illinois Realtor Legal Counsel. And that's where a lot of the associations locally are following in that regards, because one of the lawsuits out there was the bonus structure, where bonuses were coming to agents if you close by August 31st, right? And you get $1,000. That was one of the lawsuits, that we're incentivizing the wrong audience to purchase a home. So that is where currently Betsy sits on this. She thinks it's a very slippery slope. Not that it's illegal from what your perspective is, but it's that way.
Question was, can I modify the agreement between me and my buyer as to what that agency agreement is?
It'll always be based.
It wasn't, can I make a separate deal with the listing agent that I will push my folks to close faster in order to get a higher commission? I'm saying that, broadly speaking, in terms of the agreement and the definition of what services you're providing your buyer in exchange for the compensation they are offering you, you still have the right to make those modifications. I just wouldn't touch that, without an attorney looking it over and drafting it up. And I'm not trying to get more work.
No.
And my point.
Wait, we still have a second part to that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second part was about signing buyer agencies overall. Unfortunately, you no longer have a choice.
Right. It's the law.
If you are belonging to a board,
Policy.
all of the settlement agreements state that you must have a buyer agency in place before opening a door for a showing. Open house is excluded, but you don't have a choice. As of January 1st, the bill will be put in place to make it licensed law. So whether or not you are a realtor or just a licensed agent, everyone in the state for properties, whether it's a sale or a rental, will be required to have that buyer's agency in place before opening doors. Does that make that clear with the buyer agency and signing them?
And to Miguel's point to went before, what I said first, go high. Okay, that alleviates everything.
Get a whole
Okay?
dozen of chickens.
There is no problem with this. Go high. I've already seen a lot of chickens being paid. This is a win-win if you know how to play the game. Okay.
So yes, I've already been using these. Obviously, it's a nice conversation with the potential buyers on this, and it is a contract between the agent and the buyer, and the managing broker has to sign off on it because everything is owned by the managing broker. So also been showing them that we will be trying to get that compensation from the other party, explaining that we can take no more than is on here. Me as a sponsoring broker, I can say to them, I don't believe in working for nothing. If there's something offered, I would like to be able to accept it. But I also don't believe, if I'm happy with what they're giving me, we'll have that discussion, but I'll complete this form before I send in the purchase offer, that I will waive the difference between here. Now, as a sponsoring broker, and I have to sign off on all of these. My agents have all of these, and it's still a contract between them and their buyer, but everything is owned by the sponsoring broker. Can I do something that authorizes my agents, with my consent, if they are happy with the compensation that they're receiving from a seller's side, that they have my authorization to waive a different, to let their people know that we will waive the difference?
That's an office policy.
That's an office policy, and you want to talk to your legal counsel of how to put that in the form, because this form
Well, and I don't think it would be
doesn't
in the
allow
form. I
that.
think that would be an agreement between
doesn't have to be in the
sponsoring broker and agent that says, if you are happy with what the other side is
Yes. compensating,
and I'm telling my agent, when you set that appointment, write down, call them all, find out what their compensation is, and write it down on your sheet so you know.
And what if those list agents do not have permission from their sellers to disclose that? Or what if that list side, the seller is not paying a compensation? They have said zero.
Then they have to try and negotiate that
And they're going to negotiate
on
it
the
in the
contract.
offer.
on the offer,
Yeah,
just
it's in
like
the
you want a
offer.
commercial form.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And
we just wanted, we want to make it clear that the buyer agency form is a set compensation. It is clear, according to the settlement, there were 4 conditions that buyer agency compensations are clear, that they are specific. They're not, you can't say a range. One of the things that is being removed, you all have the draft, but our earlier one had that it would be negotiated at contract time if what was being in the within your buyer agency and the selling side was paying a higher compensation. Say something with bonuses from new construction. We cannot negotiate that according to the settlement.
yeah.
It's not like at offer time. So that's why we don't have a range, and it's very specific.
No range on the buyer agreement. You could do it on the other side. We'll talk about that later. Okay, that's where you have play. Okay, so the way to really do this is you never talk about compensation. You should be making an offer. In your offer, you use the sheet that we have here to ask for your compensation. That's how it should always go. Period. Show your properties, ask for it in your offer. And if it's a high enough offer, trust me, they will give. If it's not, no different than the way they were before. Okay? Nothing has changed. This is why I tell my agents all the time, this is the way it's always been. If you haven't done commercial, that's okay, but you've all done FSBOs if you've been around. A FSBO, think about it. Nothing's changed. It's the way commercial's been done forever. Okay? It's the way business should have been done. I'm sorry. 80 years ago, someone had a great idea. Didn't turn out so well right now.
Any other questions about buyer agency?
In the sense of what I was going to ask is, so are you basically telling people not to call prior to an agent
Should never.
and find out if there's any compensation?
I recommend to my agents that they do not call the list agent before showing a property,
Never.
because it does not matter. Now, if they have a buyer who just doesn't have the extra money, my recommendation is they make that offer appealing enough. They can always, at this point in time, roll in additional financing. They cannot roll in your commission. So if you go higher up in a price, as long as it appraises, that's going to be some of that. But no, I'm telling my agents it doesn't matter.
Correct.
Because what do you do if you call and they say the seller is not offering or is not sharing the amount? Because it,
The other accusation.
right, steering. And so, again, yes, it makes it a little bit more difficult. And then there's another group of people who say, well, if my buyer can't pay, they can't get that house. Well, there's always that. I had buyers bid $52,000 over list price and couldn't get the house as is, cash, no other contingencies. They didn't have enough cash to get the house.
Right.
Same thing with a buyer who can't pay an agency commission. You're going to have to write the offer.
Right.
I think there
Right,
was
move
one
on.
other question. No? Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Move on to the next,
All right.
next form.
The addendum to the multi-board residential real estate contract.
Well, this is the seller agreement to pay the buyer broker compensation. So this is, the form that's, basically pretty simple. It just states the dollar amount that you are agreeing to pay. This is the one that we have, going with the contract, correct? This is the one we had. So whenever you give in a contract, okay, this should accompany that, and this is your ask. What is on your buyer agreement is really what it should be, okay? That's your ask. And once again, think about it this way, okay? This is just, it's two sides of a negotiation now. We never really had to do it that way because they always gave us whatever they wanted to give us, okay? Now you're going to get what you want. And the bottom line is, think about this. Over 30 years, your commission, if you're not getting it or they're only giving you 2 chickens and you want 2.5 chickens, okay? Figure out over 30 years, that dollar amount is what? $4 a month over 30 years? And then they don't have to pay you up front, so bid high. And how else are you going to win these days? You got to bid high anyway. That's how you get your commission, okay?
So just so everyone's clear, this addendum is not just for the multi-board. If you have agents that are writing purchase contracts for land, if you're writing on a different purchase contract, say Winnebago County, you can add this to any purchase contract. It is the buyer who is making the ask on behalf of what they have to pay their buyer agency.
You notice buyer and seller are the only ones signing on this.
Right. Agents are not involved in this part.
So it's part of the contract, which is exactly what a buyer and seller, purchase contract is. So that's why you just say, see addendum. Here it is. Right now, it's only see addendum because we don't have it on the 7.0.
This supersedes, but the buyer should not ask for more than what is on the buyer agency.
Because if you do, you're not getting it anyway.
You're
What would be the point?
violating
Yeah.
the settlement.
Yeah. No, you can't. You put what you asked for in your buyer agreement. That's what this number should be in every contract. So every purchase, every offer to purchase, that this should accompany that form, the 7.0 or whatever you're using.
And know that with the ask of 2 goldfish, a chicken, and a goat, you may end up with only 2 goldfish, and then your buyer's going to bring you the goat. And the chicken, maybe
Correct.
not. Maybe the chicken's going to just run across the road. But know that the buyer, I need you guys laughing.
Mm-hmm.
You're all so serious. So, what we're seeing, or what I'm seeing, is that buyers are bringing part of the compensation to the table, as well as the sellers contributing part to the buyer agency compensation.
Yeah.
So, I think that the buyers understand the value. Those agents are able to explain their value to the buyer and let them know that that buyer agent is working as a fiduciary duty for the buyer. They are working in their best interest to get them the best price, to get them the best terms. May not always be below asking, may be over asking, may feel like they gave away their first child. But it depends on the market. And conversations we have today may change in a different market. When we go to a buyer's market, there may be sellers willing to give free tacos away for life or something, because our market dictates so much. once upon a time, how many of us had appraisal gap in our vocabulary as a regular basis?
See,
Buyers go into situations these days expecting multiple offers on properties.
that will change. There now, but it will change.
And again, we've had a pretty strong market. All of these are dependent on the market.
So just remember your value. Use those, all those tools. NAR's got these, 180 reasons, to use a buyer agent, what you do for them. This is your chance to shine. You need to tell them and be more transparent. I found myself, I've been doing this for 40 years. I found myself never telling the people, I just do it. I do what I do, and I don't really tell my client what I'm doing. Now I find myself doing that so they understand. Hey, today, not like you're gloating, but hey, today I had to talk to so-and-so. I was on the phone for an hour and a half doing this, the other, not in complain way or whatever. Just tell them what you've done so they understand the value, and that's going to go a long way if we do that, which most of us haven't, guilty, over the years. They will understand and therefore want to pay you. What I'm seeing is they want to pay the buyers, not the whole thing, of course, and remember, nothing's going to go until you talk it over with your buyer. So it's not like you're going to pull the hood over them, hoodwink them, because they have to know that, hey, this one is paying, let's say it's, 2 1/4 chickens and a goat, and there's another 1/4 chicken and a goat there. And so here, are you okay with this? Or as an agent, are you okay with that? So that's the discussion you have before you have a deal. So once you have the deal, that's it. You're in. You're done. Question right here.
On the where it says the commission is dollar amount blank or dollar or blank percentage of the sales price or to be defined consideration, shouldn't there be something like whichever is less or?
Nope.
Oh, no.
Because we cannot have a range. So it's not whichever is less. The settlement is what we looked at very carefully with these forms. So the blank is to be defined.
Number.
A la carte. Some agents are doing a la carte. And they're going to charge you 4 tires to show 5 homes. Because, your car gets, okay, I'll stop trying to be funny. Thank you, Justin. So again, we don't know how creative agents are going to be with compensation. Therefore, this leaves it open, but it needs to be defined, specific, transparent.
Yeah.
And so it cannot be a range. Yeah, it could be variable rates.
People do variable rates, especially on higher end stuff. That's not uncommon.
So you're in that number, whatever that is, say
Correct.
you just X that blank out.
Yes, cross it out and don't use
Utilize
the
whatever you're
dollar
using.
or
Right.
to be defined.
Correct.
How come we start first with the listing?
If we can wait to the listing, we're not there yet.
If the seller is willing to pay the commission.
Yes, you do.
Well, you do.
Because it's not guaranteed on the MLS. Every one of you agents used to know what you were being offered as compensation from the MLS. August 17th, it took it out of the MLS.
But they thought you were worth it.
But it has to still be signed and agreed on.
Right.
And if you don't have it in writing, we all know in real estate, if it's not in writing, it
Exists.
doesn't exist.
And we'll discuss the listing agreement in a second. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a question right there, that gentleman. Oh, Rich, over there first. Sorry.
Okay. On the
Tighten up a little.
buyer's exclusive right to acquire, the one sentence where it says brokerage firm may not receive compensation from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to with the buyer. But then the last statement on this addendum, the last sentence, it says any amount being offered by seller or seller's brokerage exceeding brokerage fee up to blah, 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 of the purchase price will be negotiated at the time of purchase agreement. That seems to be contradictory.
That needs to be out of there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that was originally when we made this form. That was a thing. It is not a thing.
Yep.
Good call.
The last sentence.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
last sentence on
Cross that
the
out.
addendum.
Yeah, it's on that compensation addendum. It's the very last sentence.
Yep.
Good find.
Any amount.
Yeah.
Correct. Sorry, I thought
I thought we got that out already.
we already got that out.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a question. I just have a comment. Fill out this form. Contract. Make sure that you put it in that it is a part of the contract. I recently had a deal where I did that, made it part of the contract. The other realtor tried to send back something of her own form, which was not part of the contract with contradicting terms in there.
Right.
So I had signed the sales contract that said this addendum was attached. So you have to stick to that addendum. If you want to make a change to it, that's negotiable, but you cannot send me something different. So make sure you put it in the contract
Jim,
that it
exactly
is actually part
That's
of
why I
the
said in the
contract.
7.0, just put see addendum, and you could call it exactly see this addendum. That is a part of the contract. And they
Paragraph.
can't alter that. I mean, they can alter that part of it, but they can't change the addendum.
But what did you put it?
So in paragraph 38 on the 7.0 contract, you should put in seller or buyer agent comp addendum. Because the title is long, seller agreement to pay buyer's brokerage
Right.
compensation. So if you put buyer comp addendum, that means that you are attaching that addendum.
Yeah, as essentially, like Jim said, as part of the contract. Yeah.
Wait, legal brief.
Although there's at least 3 lines in paragraph 38, so you might as well write out the actual title to the thing.
Okay.
So that it's not,
Thank you.
because you're gonna wind up with the battle of forms.
Yeah.
And the addendum as drafted does say that it's incorporated into the contract. So as long as you write it into 38, you'll be covered.
Perfect.
Perfect.
I don't know if this is too much to ask, but could you just take a couple minutes to role play like you are a buyer and you don't know what the hell this is and why you should sign it? And could you just role play that out just so we can kind of get a feel for what we should be telling our clients?
Sure.
You want to be the broker or you want to be the buyer?
I'll be the buyer.
Okay.
I like being feisty today.
Okay.
Oops.
I don't need okay. Hello, Mr. and Miss, Miss Buyer. I'm Rick Williams, United Real Estate. We're going, we want to, to do property, and now in the state of Illinois, there's been a big change, throughout the country, actually. And in order to buy property, we now have to have a buyer-broker agreement prior to our first showing and every showing thereafter. So this is an agreement, and what this agreement states is basically all the things that I am going to do for you and what I am worth. Okay. And you go on to state all those things. I'm not going to sit here and state everything. I will negotiate this. I will do this. I will show you all these properties. All the things that we do as a realtor. Okay. So we go through all that. And in order for me to do that, as you know, in this profession, you may or may not know, it used to be designated on the other side that there was always a number. Now that number is something we have to put in there, and I am designating, 3 chickens. Okay, so, I believe I am worth 3 chickens, and here's why. And you've explained a lot of those things already. And what we are going to do, Mr. Buyer, is Miss Buyer, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Miss Buyer, is that will likely be negotiated with the seller on that side, and we will get all or most of this compensation from the other side. We don't know that yet, but that is the intention of what we're about to do when we do this. So you will always know what is happening prior to us signing any agreement. We will go see properties. If you like one of these properties, we will put in an offer. We will be asking for these 3 chickens from the seller side. If they give us all the chickens, we're good. You don't owe me anything. This agreement has all been taken care of. If they give me, 2 chickens, 2.5 chickens, whatever it is, at that point, and then that's your decision. I'm okay with X amount of chickens. Okay. But if they happen to be giving the 3 chickens, I want to be able to accept those 3 chickens. That is why I'm putting those chickens on here. And so when you explain your value proposition and you do it well and you explain everything that you're going to do for them, I'm going to negotiate, I'm going to do this. And then you say, so by law, well, by policy at this point, but it'll be put into license law, as of the 1st, we need to have a buyer broker agreement. So this is what that is. So the most important thing is that they know they don't have to agree to pay that until you've gone through the whole process. They're going to know whether they're paying the 3 chickens or not. They can't, nothing could go by them without that happening. You can't do it. So that's the most important part of the whole operation here. And then you proceed, does that sound okay? Great. Sign it. I got a YouTube video I sent it to all my realtors. I think I sent it to somebody. I don't know, Nina, you might have got it. It's the best way I've heard something, pretty much what I just said, but the guy did it better than I did, of course. But it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. It's like, of course, where do I sign? And that was the gist of what he said. And that's how you get them to sign it, and then you move on. And the whole idea is, like I said, being able to make them understand that they're not paying that 3 chickens until they know that that's going to happen, or you'll agree on lesser chickens. That part of it is not written. No, you are correct. Well, if you're going to be a dishonest agent, then you don't have a great client. You don't have a good relationship, because all mine believe. Okay.
Trying to convince someone to sign a legal document.
I understand.
I have clients who would say,
I absolutely agree that some
It's a
clients
possibility.
will. Unfortunately, we cannot produce that and stay with the settlement. If you are choosing, the best way that I can say is that statement that it is not set by license law and everything is negotiable.
Yeah.
If we need to negotiate it to get you the property you want, we'll visit and cross that bridge when we get there.
And what I always say, I will not stand in your way for that, because I never will. I mean, I personally don't ever have a problem with anything like that, but understood. But
Well, it depends.
That's exactly the opposite.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, they can't really.
No.
Because
well, but in fairness, right? We can look at those, right? And that's a fair statement, but it's no different than the seller side, right?
Yeah.
I can't net out if you don't give me less commission on that side. And we had to make business decisions at that point in time, just like we do now.
Right.
It's not changing that conversation any. We just now have to have that buyer side conversation that we haven't been prepared to have yet, right? We've done it. Has anybody accepted less commission on the sell side that they weren't prepared to accept?
Yeah.
It's going to be the same thing.
Yeah.
The difference is what we haven't seen a lot of, and we haven't had this because it's more about contracts and it's about mortgage at this point in time, is what the mortgage industry is willing to do about this, right? When the mortgage actually steps up and has more blatant conversations about this, there's going to be a lot more solutions available to us.
And that will happen, by the way.
now, when I talk to my buyers, especially first-time home buyers, they, one of the things that I present to them is, sellers always have signed contracts and stated what they would pay their list agent. We now are doing this with buyers, and we state what our value is and what you're going to pay us. Oh, I don't want to pay you, is usually the first objection that I hear. Oh, well, what do you do? Do you work for free? Relay that. This is your job. Show your value, but also relay that this is your job. I am not going to represent you without getting compensated. We have systems in place that we can ask for that, but you really want someone to help navigate you through this. And again, put in there, once I compare it to a listing agreement for the buyer and saying, I am working exclusively for you, I am your fiduciary, I'm working in your best interest, they tend to get that a little bit. If they're still apprehensive, sign it for a shorter time frame and then sign a longer one. You need to build relationships sometimes.
And the key to this, going to be, as most of you know, we're about to talk about the listing side, is the listing side. If you're not telling your sellers how to do this, that's where the fallacy is. Don't let them tell you what they think they saw on the news and make it correct. Okay, because we know what they saw on the news. It's all wrong, 100% wrong. So you need to do that and do that in a correct way, because if we start from that end of it, there's never going to be a problem on the buyer side.
Okay,
And just to clarify that lenders are actually requesting this buyer's agency agreement as a condition of the loan.
I don't know that they're requesting it as a condition of the loan.
I just had one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
they
I've
want
not
to
had that
see.
yet.
Yes,
They want
I'm
to
aware.
see how much the buyer is due to pay at
Correct.
closing to make
But
sure.
they should but if it's gotten to a lender already, you already know the deal.
No, I know. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
that was a condition that they needed to see this agency agreement
Absolutely.
to make sure.
But when the contract comes, they're going to know it's either a half a chicken, one chicken, no chickens. But yes, they want to see that. A goat. I like chickens.
And there
I'm very
also
partial.
there are loan options out there that do allow buyers to pay for the commissions. That's like a separate personal loan that they can get approved for.
Yeah, I just heard that. Yeah.
Okay, that
so it's
one I
already
haven't
out
heard.
there, but after January 1st, I assure you, I talked to a lot of lenders. It's going to be a thing. I mean, it will be real, and none of this, in the way that we're talking about it now, will be as much of an issue.
And I know that some lenders are asking for the buyer agency so they can put it in the good faith estimate.
Yeah.
You do not have to share your buyer agency agreement
Never.
with the list agent.
Never. Just like you don't share the list with the buyer agent.
So currently, then all of the numbers and percentages are still the same, like versus conventional FHA. Okay.
I've heard differently, like if it's customary, but right now, none of my lenders are saying that's happening.
Buyer and seller.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what I call transferring.
But then you can't get any commission according to the settlement. If you put 0 on your buyer
You can get
agency, you cannot get paid for that transaction.
You're entitled to 0.
after the settlement.
But I have others.
Nope. But then you are acting against the settlement. The
The buyer
settlement
agency
says
agreement dictates what you
that-
get.
you should not send it to the list agent
No,
side.
no.
But remember, you cannot get paid more than what's in your buyer agency.
Right.
If you're putting 0, you can't get paid anything, even if the seller is offering compensation.
And just so you know, I mean, they're going to spot check, the MLS, MRED is going to check things when they sense a fishy thing. I got a big enough practice where I know they sense fishy things every once in a while, so we have to send it all in. That's when they're going to start checking. If they, for whatever reason, they sense that, well, this might have been a 0 thing, and then you start trying to doctor it up, that's not going to fly. You're going to get a very large fine, for stuff like that, if you try to alter stuff like that. So don't do that.
Ready to go on?
Are we good with this? One more question, and we're going to move on
And then
to
we'll
the
move to the
listing.
listing agreement.
So
Yeah.
if you get a call, hey, I'd like to see this property. You don't know this person, they don't know. So they wouldn't be comfortable immediately signing something that commits. You could, as you say, make it for a very short period of time. Can you also make it maybe specific to only properties you will view with the person?
One showing, 2 showings, or whatever. You can make it very specific.
I wonder if we do need to go back and add in location so they can put in a property address.
You could write it in there. Yeah, you could do 1 day. You could do it 2 hours.
But I
mean,
still
really.
think that,
Right. You
but I
could.
still think maybe location.
I don't see people being so loyal to that.
Hold on, one at a time.
Well, if you're talking about one property, which I just had, one of my agents just had that, one property. One shot. Okay, and one shot. And that's what I told him to do. I said, make it for one shot. And then he knew the listing side too, so it was a complete mess up, and I had to think it through to figure out what was the best way to do this. But yeah, for the buyer, so he wouldn't get screwed, basically from both ends of this there. So he did sign the buyer did one shot basically it was specific to the property, basically. And then the listing side, kind of the same thing. It wasn't really a listing agreement, but it was, I forgot what I even said, but I thought it all out. We both did over the phone and we figured it out. And it was just that type of arrangement. So you can still, and things like that always happened before that. It wasn't like this was the first time it ever happened. It's just that first time it ever happened since August 17th. And so we figured out the best way, and that would be like just do it one shot, 1 hour, whatever.
So I do know it's a hot topic. We will come back to questions. Hold them, write them down if you have more questions. But we do want to get through one more document. Appreciate everybody's time that's here today.
Yeah.
So let's move forward real quick and handle the list side of the conversation.
You really started off.
You're right. Yeah. We're going to discuss the residential exclusive right to sell, the listing agreement. The longest of the ones that we've got here. But
Okay. And yes, it's 10 pages. However, you'll notice there's lots of white space because we didn't want paragraphs there. So at the top, we put in the price, the duration, how long it is, and what that marketing price is. Have our closing and possession, the automatic extension, who the designated agents brokerage services, compensation for services. It starts there on the bottom of that first page, goes up to the top of the second page. We broke apart the compensation, and this was very intentional because your conversation should be intentional. This is what I charge on listing your home. So the seller side. Again, whether it is if your brokerage charges a listing fee, you can put that in. And then the second A, B, and C are how you are compensating. Is it a percentage? Is it a flat rate? Is it something else? Do you have a variable? So the first $1 million, you're charging 2 chickens, and then after $1 million, you're getting a goat. And then after $3 million, you're getting a Mercedes. Okay. Whatever.
I like that.
So that's, that other, it allows opportunity because compensation is negotiable. And we may not have thought of every type of compensation, and we want to make sure that this form lasted a little bit longer than 2 weeks until we start seeing creativity among agents.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the procuring compensation to the buyer side. And on that side, you talk about where the seller is going to pay a procuring broker. So we have a percent or dollar compensation in paragraph A. And again, we allowed for gross or net compensation. In paragraph B, it talks about unrepresented buyer procuring commission.
And that could be dual or no agency, either or. But it's the one who walks in on your, open house or whatever. So just unrepresented.
So there has been an uptick of buyers coming in and saying, I do not want representation because they don't want to pay a buyer agent and they think they're going to get a better deal. According to NAR standards, 70% of unrepresented buyers don't close a contract.
Yeah.
You might want to share that with your sellers. But so
there is that number there. You fill it in. It doesn't have to be the full. Be whatever you decide.
For an unrepresented buyer, who gets that? It's the one that is procuring. And you may have a talk with your seller. If a buyer comes in and they are not represented and there's no agency, there is still going to be work that needs to be done on behalf of that buyer.
Right.
Most likely by me, the list agent. So I am probably going to need to be there for the inspection. I am probably going to need to be there for the final walkthrough and all of that because you need someone there.
Might even write the contract. I mean, it depends. I mean, you can
Right.
rise to that level. You know, might even need to get them an attorney. A lot of times they have an attorney, but maybe they don't.
So again, you are not representing the buyer. It's unrepresented, no agency, but you will still need to do some tasks to make the best effort to get that contract to closing. And that's that unrepresented procuring cause compensation.
To be decided by you and your seller.
Seller.
Yeah. In addition to what you had in the blank before. So this is a completely separate cost, if you will, to the seller.
All right, and then the seller can authorize closing cost credit. So if they want to offer just general closing cost credit, and that can be used however the buyer wants, that's an option. We always have other because, again, we cannot foresee what might be coming down in creativeness. And then E, the seller does not authorize brokerage to offer, and brokerage will not offer a procuring commission.
Always an option. We don't like the option, but it's an option.
Because broker's company compensation is not set by law and it's fully negotiable.
What if the seller says, I'm open to negotiations? Do we put on a settlement agreement? Because I've gotten like 3 different answers on that.
Can I
Go on.
Okay, so I was just in a conference and there were like 30 states represented there with my company. So it was great because I got all these different states and what's going on. So you really got great perspective. And this happened to be the state of California. Okay, I don't want to get into the whole thing, but the bottom line, what they do on these listing agreements, and because of what was mandated by the DOJ federally, is they put a commission up to set amount, whatever, 2.5 goats, 3.5 chickens, you know, whatever it is. And that's how they roll. Okay. And that pretty much covers everything. So meaning if the offer is good enough, they'll pay. If it's, you know, if you're asking, you know, 500 grand and you get 420, I don't think the higher amount of that is going to be paid. You know, all those goats are going to be paid. But if that that seller gets, you know, 575,000, then all those chickens and goats can be paid, right? I mean, that's where this all comes to, which really doesn't change. What I'm trying to get to, you know, through to everybody is nothing has changed. Everything, the only thing that's changed is now we have to talk about it. We never had to talk about our compensation on the buy side or the logistically on the sell side as to what number is going to the buy side. But that's one way you could kind of leave it open.
And I have two,
and that's okay on the bliss side.
I have 2 philosophies. Depending on your relationship with that seller and what they can understand.
Yes.
I have one seller that we put in a specific amount because I know this seller would not be able to like understand some bigger picture items.
Right.
The other seller, we put in 0. And it's because that seller has a clear understanding that the compensation is going to be asked by the buyer for them to pay it based on their agreement. It's an outside agreement. We can agree based on their offer to pay all of what they're asking for or none of what they're asking for. It's now part of the terms. I will do my net sheet for my seller
That's key.
based on a couple of terms for them, so they understand what that looks like.
That, I believe, right there is the most crucial thing that you can do from the listing side. Not that that wasn't before, but more important than ever now. Do that net sheet so they know exactly what it's going to be at different levels. Okay? If no one pays this, if 2.5 chickens, if 3 chickens, this and that. Therefore, they know, and then you know, well, remember we discussed this? You know, this is what we got now. So here we are. Yeah, go ahead. I know Patricia has something too.
And Fernando has something.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to complement what you guys are saying, and I was doing it the former way. So I was putting 0% in there and then adding language that seller will negotiate based on terms of the offer. Lynn Madison gave me some feedback directly. She said, put in the maximum compensation that your seller is willing to offer into the agreement. And then on the other section, this is the language she gave us. She said, seller will negotiate buyer's brokerage confirm compensation, if any, with buyer or buyer's authorized representative through the purchase contract.
Yeah, everything should be through the
very,
contract.
very simple, straightforward,
Yeah.
and that leaves it open to negotiating based on the terms that the offers come in.
And I love Lynn, and I will disagree with her on one item. My buyer may change their mind and give that Mercedes if the purchase price is high enough and they're netting what they want.
Right.
And so, again, it's all going to be there, and we're going to learn.
Yeah, we're all through the process.
We are in the biggest learning curves of our careers.
But the biggest thing is on the list side, that can change more so than it can on the buyer side. On the buyer side, not so much. But on the list side, yes.
So my question is about putting in, like they do in California, up to X amount. That's not specific.
Doesn't have to be on the list side.
But
We're not talking about the buyer side.
But the commission should be specific.
It doesn't have to be. I'm
And
just telling you the fact. It doesn't.
Because it is going to be
This is straight from the
negotiated.
DOJ. Just saying.
Yeah.
They wrote the contract.
I see a problem there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Managing broker, I just. They said all the other agents were telling them, well, you're going to have to pay the standard 2.5%. And they said to me, isn't that what the lawsuit's all about? So
Yes.
I just want to warn managing brokers that some of these agents are out there saying this stuff.
Yep.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yep.
To me. Yeah.
We want to
Mind-boggling.
reiterate for anybody that's listening that's with the government that we don't have a standard commission.
We don't have a standard.
It's never been.
We need some
Never
re-education.
was.
Negotiable.
Never will be.
Kari, I was just trying to clarify. So you said you had two sellers. One seller, you had a definite number in their listing agreement. With the other seller, you had zero for.
Correct. 0 for the buyer compensation. Knowing that they are going to negotiate based on what offer is presented, just like purchase price.
It just seems that putting zero in there as a number that they're willing to pay is counterintuitive. Just like, I mean, I understand putting an up to number, right? Because you can come down from what your high is. And we know if you say up to 6% of purchase price, they know what that number is going to be.
Right.
If you put zero into the listing agreement, I mean, you're going to have a whole nother agreement once you renegotiate whatever's going on. But that's.
But it's
You
in
don't.
the buyer addendum, in that
But the
seller agreeing
which is
to
the other
pay.
thing I wanted to ask you is because the way your form is written on the listing agreement, it says seller will enter into an agreement with the procuring broker, but the addendum that we have is between buyer and seller, not between buyer and procuring broker. So the language is very confusing. I'm trying to figure out what form is going to fill that gap.
The addendum for the purchase contract, the seller to pay the buyer agent.
The other part.
I think we'll
In the
change
listing agreement.
in the listing agreement.
It should state both. It could either go through the brokerage and or, basically what they want is buyer to seller.
Right.
Yeah. Correct. Understood. No, you're right, Miguel. Yes.
Right.
Right. And the bottom line now is they've not done away with broker to broker today. Technically, it will be gone, but it is not gone now. So that still exists, but everything future, will be, buyer to seller is really what we're talking about. And then we have to sign on the buyer side as designated managing brokers to attain that, commission on that part of it.
We'll take a look at that language.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying,
Definitely take
Miguel.
a look at the language because it is confusing.
Yeah. Everything is. I could go further. So
Yep.
where are we on? Page
3.
Page 3. So on page 3, we have the protection period. That's that same blank that you had before. How long will you be protected? You know, when they decide, you know, they don't want you anymore and this, that, the other. And then all of a sudden, that buyer, you know, now it's in, you know, so this is that period. Nothing's changed with that. It's a similar blank. The fixtures and the personal property, we pretty much kept, you know, everything the same. We thought out everything, and I think we have everything in there. We added here the leased or not owned items. Okay, we kind of put that in there. Solar system, you know, alarm systems, you know, propane tanks and water softeners. So we put that possibility in there, just trying to think outside the box a little bit, things that weren't in there. So that, you know, talk about the same thing, the multiple listing service, the web services, you know, all these kind of things. Those are kind of the same blanks that we had before. Nothing changed there. On page 3, page 4, we talk about, you know, the basic representations, limited home warranties we talk about here. Whether or not, you know, yes or no, who's going to pay basically for that. You know, we're not in a market for that right now, obviously. You know, I mean, maybe the buyer is going to pay for it. You know, that's fine. But certainly the sellers aren't doing that today. But that will change. That too will change. That used to be a thing all the time. Then we talked about lock boxes, and we talked about something we changed here, these personalized love letters, you know, these offer letters.
And we do know that the love letters need a yes or no box.
Just yes or no. It's not all about discrimination. That's why they you know, in Oregon, it's illegal. There's many states that, you know, made them illegal. But the bottom line is the only reason they did that was the propensity to have discrimination within those letters. They don't all have that in there, but many of them do. So we are giving the option to your seller to say, you want to see them or you're not. And I just got one like yesterday, and it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. She threw something in there, which was fine. It was not that big a deal. It was not discriminatory in any way, but it existed. Okay. On the next page, on page 5, we talk about all the assessments, same kind of stuff that we had before. Special assessments, if any, we need to address that, of course. Additional associations, yes. You mean where it says buyer's designated agent there?
It just gives what that designation means on page 5 versus naming it. Because that agent on page 1 where we name the agent, it just has, sorry.
I don't think it defined it. It just said who it was.
No, it kind of.
There was always.
Yeah, it was always two.
We have always had that in the contract. It is redundancy, intentional redundancy. So you have an opportunity to explain the difference between your sponsoring broker, who is the legal guardian of the contract and the listing, versus the designated agent, who the responsibilities are. So it's the opportunity to do that and reconfirm those conversations.
I have a question regarding the love letters.
Yep.
Because of the opening discrimination, putting that.
We need permission that the seller does not want to see them. Because you need to know ahead of time, right? If someone gives you a love letter.
Yeah, sometimes they just come with the offer.
They come with the offer.
You don't really have choice.
Do you need to take them out?
Right.
And not, or does your seller want them?
Exactly.
Again, it's putting your seller in jeopardy of possibly violating fair housing laws by seeing them and choosing one offer over the other. Mm-hmm. And so when I present them, NAR recommends that we don't accept them, that the sellers don't. However, we cannot control what the sellers want. We have to dictate and see what they want. So if the sellers want them,
and the buyer's really, that's more the buyer's agent, actually. I mean, you know, he or she knows what they're putting in there. So it kind of can be restricted on that side, but this is the listing agreement. So if it comes, and it comes from the buyer side, obviously we're not putting it in there. Do you want to see them or not? Because it's not discriminatory to them. It's more on the buyer. I think it's the buyer agent that's really in violation there. because they shouldn't have put that in there if in fact it was discriminatory in any way, shape, or form. So I don't think it's a seller issue.
Just regarding that, the offer letters, what I see those initials, it's not saying the seller does or doesn't want them. It's more having the conversation and having them initial that and then giving them the option once one comes, because this doesn't say.
Like I said, we need to add yes or no check boxes.
Oh, yeah. I thought we did it. Yeah.
No, it's not on the form. We need to fix that it's yes or no.
I guess with don't initial it means no.
All right.
Let's go with that for now.
Okay.
All right. So then we got.
We still left in, a lot of the other information about consent to represent other sellers, obviously, disclosure and consent to dual agency is there with the full description of what you can and cannot do as a dual agency, and then the seller confirming. Fair housing paragraph is there.
We define broker responsibilities.
Yep.
On page 7, and then we also talk about the leasing of a property. Okay, so we put it all in here. You know how it was always on there, the possibility that it may lease. They get tired of selling, they can't sell it, now all of a sudden they want to lease, or they knew it from the get-go and whatever happens first. So that's always here as well. So we have that in there, and all the same type of things.
I have one question.
Yes.
There's no cancellation and no cancellation fee where there used to be. Did you take it out?
We probably inadvertently did not get in here because a cancellation fee, I understand.
Yeah, so these are all great points, and this is why we're all here,
So a cancellation fee would be if the seller cancels the listing agreement before the expiration date, after you've spent either hundreds or thousands of dollars on photos, staging, whatever.
And it's got to be mutual. It's got to be a mutual agreement, but there's typically a fee in there for whatever that is.
And some agents charge a cancellation fee to just recoup some of their money that they've already spent.
Yeah, photos and everything else, marketing.
Web services on marketing authorization on page 6.
Because we want to specifically point out the web services separately, that paragraph can be moved if, that makes more sense. But those are those questions that are in the MLS that are specific about marketing and whether it gets shared.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, they had it in the MLS start. That's why we kind of put it there. But yeah, makes sense.
That makes sense.
And then we have the seller obligations on page 8, the same thing, the homestead exemption, all those different things, senior citizen exemption, all those things seller further represents, not pending that same stuff that we've had before in the listing agreement. On page 9, what do you have here? This is the entire agreement, and if there are any attachments and things like that go along with this, that might be.
And then page 10, of course, is everyone involved with their signatures.
Right.
Unfortunately, we probably don't have a good answer because it needs to go through to the board of directors. So we need to get them updated, get the changes, get it approved. I don't expect it to be less than a week.
Yeah.
But it could be up to 2.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Meanwhile, we could just.
No, Norma, you are not practicing law.
Miguel, can you please address this?
No, you may not use your old contract. Our E&O will not cover using outdated contracts.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they're online. Yeah.
One question back here.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question for the Forms Committee.
Okay, let's hear.
Yes.
I deal with clients that are a little older than some of the people in this room. The type on here is tiny. Are you going to do a Reader's Digest large print as an option?
John, can we do that? Can we make the font a little bit larger?
John, can we turn 10 into 15 pages? Everybody will love that. It used to be 13, so.
I was going to say now.
The 7.0 is at least.
Talk to me tomorrow, Norma.
All right.
Yeah.
So, before the questions resume, I do want to thank you all for being here. I do appreciate you guys taking your time to be professionals and understand what's going on. I appreciate you guys being here. We all appreciate you being here, taking that time to make sure that you understand what we're doing and how we need to communicate with our clients with all this new paperwork and helping us validate check our documents.
Yes.
Right? We
great.
are human. We
Thank
make
you.
mistakes, and I appreciate the patience and understanding of what goes on. So I always appreciate everyone showing up and being that way for us. We are a small but mighty association, and I love every single one of us for that because we participate and we're active. With that, what other questions do we have? Because I know we stopped you short, but they will be soon. I don't think all of them are yet.
Under the library, I believe they're interactive fillable forms. I don't know that, yes, I don't know. John, I know you don't have control over DocuSign or .loop. Do you know if they're? Okay.
Good.
Okay. Add cancellation.
Yeah, question.
I have two questions.
Okay.
First, what if I'm a dual agent? I'm working with a client. They want to see this house and it happens to be mine. And if the buyer's agency says I only can get 2.5%, then how does that work? And I get more on the seller side as well.
Well, you already would have a seller agreement, whatever.
Both of those agreements are.
Have anything to do with part of it then?
No.
No.
So your buyer agency that you signed, if you said,
That's your number.
I'm going to get 2 chickens. If your seller side, they're paying out 1 chicken, you negotiate. And remember, dual agency, you cannot advise.
Highly
You
don't
have
recommend.
to stay neutral.
Put it that way.
But does that make sense? That because whatever the buyer agency is, you're going to ask based on that buyer's offer for the 2 chickens you put in your buyer agency. It becomes negotiating just like price. What was your other question?
The second question is, well, first off, the first one, and you told me, first question that I had, that I know that agents were getting sued because agent was not happening, or is there a prevention of that?
I have not heard it happen in Illinois yet. I know there is some other class action lawsuits brewing. What I would say is, if you cannot show your buyer in a reasonable amount of time, and you have this exclusive buyer agency, you need to have coverage.
Yeah.
Just like when you take a vacation, who's covering your clients? Because how are you doing it so that you weren't in a procuring cause discussion, right? If someone showed your buyer while you were on vacation, but then you came in and wrote that contract, you shouldn't be getting paid. Procuring cause is not going away.
Correct.
It's different now. It'll be a lot
So
different,
you
but
want
yeah.
to make sure that you have another agent to cover you. That agent can be added on as a designated agent to the buyer agency.
And like talking about normal showings, this is, people have been sued for this, but it's the question about, right now I'm a buyer. Okay. So I'm looking at this. I'm going, okay, I don't want to pay commission, but what if I'm looking in different areas? So if I'm looking in Chicago, I want another realtor that knows Chicago, Now, is this going to prevent that?
No, you could set it up. Make your buyer should be very transparent. I would hope that, hey, I'm also looking in the city. Are you familiar with the city? No. And you should be as transparent with them as well. No, I don't really do the city. Well, then I'm going to sign another buyer broker agreement with someone there. Okay. And then you could sign.
Then it better say location.
Exactly. Then you could put in there. I would do that under, other. I would certainly.
But it's not the only way to get it done, right? So Illinois Realtors actually does have an assignment contract as well. So you could be working on referral-based business, and then you could assign other people to do that based on that referral.
There's also,
we do not have it personally, but Illinois Realtors does have paperwork to help that particular example. You don't have to lose your exclusive agency
exists.
and still be working with someone else.
Yeah. So there
but
are ways
it has to be specific. It can't be generalities. It's got to be very detailed.
So if in that situation, you might want to use the non-exclusive agency.
Right.
Because that's available through IAR. Absolutely. We are not the end all for forms. We have IAR as well. Yeah. And IAR has the no agency form. The board is not doing a no agency form because IAR has one. We decided that to do the transition document. Basically, if you had any contracts in place before August 17th, you should be doing a disclosure or transition to say all compensation is not set by license law and negotiable. Only 2 boards, I think, locally have done an actual form. The rest have decided that IAR has it and you can use that. So there are other forms, just like the boards don't do, the disclosure forms. We're not getting into that. Contemporaneous offers.
And the only other thing that I just want to say, you brought up about, dual agency, with the new advent of buyer broker agreements and listing agreements that always existed. And buyer agreements have existed, but let's be real. It was 8 to 10% of the people were actually filling them out. Now it's 100% in theory. Okay. And it will be. Not a good idea. Dual agency, really a bad idea. Just do no agency. You still accomplish the same thing. I've been preaching that for 15 years. I don't know why anybody would do one. Just be smart.
No.
Never.
No.
Team?
Same team, yes. Same office, no.
You can do, two. Yeah.
Because then you're starting to talk sub-agency, and we don't do sub-agency.
It's just not a great idea, especially with the new. Personally, that's just the way I roll. But
I'm going to give final words, and food's out there, folks. I know what speaks. Food's there. So, final words, Rick?
Final words, thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate this input by everybody is great for us because, we sit on the committee and it's, it's just, like five, 6 of us, trying to put this together. We have really good ideas and, but when we have something like this is great because now we've got a new thing. I know you wrote them down. Perfect. We will alter that. And anything, please contact us, in doing that. Get to Justin, get to Carrie, get to myself. We will make it happen if there are things in there that are incorrect. And this is a forever changing, for now, documents. These documents are not going to be etched in stone. They just
at least 2 more before we're done.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's just the reality.
And no, we don't have a new lease listing yet. Lease listings were not kind of part of this, but it will be part of the law when the license law changes.
January 1st.
That's on our list of, hey, we're going to tackle some of the other forms and make sure. We really wanted you to have a listing agreement that had that language on there that we needed to make it compliant with the settlement.
Right. Yeah. Yep. One more question. No agency would be the best thing to give.
No agency.
Because you don't need a buyer broker agreement for that, but a no agency form would be appropriate if in fact they're not, they're not represented.
And what I've heard from Betsy Urbance, when you listen to her stuff from IAR, once they get to the conversation, at least I think it was her, don't quote me on that, that if they come in and look and like walk out, no big deal. If they start talking to you about, what do you think your sellers are going to want for this house? Are they negotiable? If they start showing interest that goes above opening the house, give them the no agency, have them sign.
That was Betsy.
That
For
wa-
sure.
okay.
And that's never changed, by the way, folks. Open houses have always been said, as long as the conversation is superficial, fine. But as soon as it becomes anything other than that, it's 347, 349, pick the poison. It's what you have. So now it becomes 347, 349 buyer's agreement. That's what you look at open house. But a buyer's open house agreement is not required. But some sort of form probably will be, depending on your office policies. Know your office policies, because risk management is an office decision, not a personal decision.
For right now, yes. Because again, the settlement was not about rental properties. When the license law changes, specific.
But
when license law changes, it will include rentals. So before you show a rental, you will need to have an agency form signed when that changes. You then
yes,
need to give
yes.
no agency.
Yes, you still need to, and specifically, you can't be dual. So yes.
Yeah.
So you're saying before you open the door, because I've done the document. Our last client, he had just had an application. I do.
The settlement says before you open the door,
should be.
You should have the buyer agency signed.
Right. When you meet, before you go in, better to do it outside.
I would say use common sense, though, right? I mean,
Exactly.
if you need to have a table to sit in, don't show anything. Do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Go straight to the kitchen table. There you go.
Right.
You could.
Or
there's solutions. Right, sign in the trunk, whatever.
There you go.
I do appreciate your time. I see a lot of hungry people here. Thank you for being here. I appreciate all of you. Fox Valley appreciates all of you. Go get the food.
Thank you. Thanks, Justin. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you.